I'm Tariq Melrose. Just finished watching a press event so packed with empty words, I'm surprised they didn't charge us for the packaging. They say one thing, mean another, and hope we're too distracted to notice. But you're not. That's why you came here. I've got the clips, the context, and the contradictions ready to go. Subscribe now, because someone has to read between the lines. And I brought a highlighter.
Jasmine Crockett just obliterated GOP lies with facts, receipts, and righteous rage, and the room went silent. Stay tuned, folks. This clip will restore your faith in truth, torch the MAGA hypocrisy, and make you proud to stand with Democrat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under the Biden administration, the United States was flooded with tens of millions of illegal immigrants that used dozens of visa programs to finesse their way into our great nation. In response to this invasion, President Trump signed an executive order simply returning immigration law back to the standards of July 19, 2021, which restores and enhances all screening of foreign nationals, especially those who are considered to be a high risk to this country. In order to secure the homeland, which was about 77 million Americans voted for, we must do more than just finish the wall, fund CBP, and support ICE's lawful deportation operations. We must also reform visa programs which have been used to usurp federal immigration law. We were told post 9/11 that we were going to fight in Afghanistan and that we had to fight in Iraq. And why? Because if we didn't fight the enemy there, then we're going to have to fight them here in our own country now. And now, because of the failures of the Democrat Party's policies, they are now in our homeland. And how do we know? Because 382 citizens who are matches on the terror watch list were encountered at the southern border, and 99 of those were released into the United States from 2001 through 2023. Unacceptable. The Democrat Party under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, Alejandro Mayorkas, and numerous other dark money groups and NGOs made it their mission to flood this country with tens of millions of unvetted immigrants and people who wish to do us harm. Terrorists like Egyptian national Mohammed Sabri Solomon, who used a homemade flamethrower and Molotov cocktails in Boulder, Colorado, to attack pro-Israel demonstrators who were advocating for the release of hostages. This man, who was admitted into the U.S. in 2022 on a tourist visa and was then given work authorization in 2023 by, yes, you guessed it, the Biden administration, and had been posting pro-Muslim Brotherhood propaganda on his Facebook page for more than a decade. Disgusting. Ms. Vaughn, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your testimony. If you had a magic wand that could create any policy to prevent tragedies such like we saw in Boulder, Colorado a few weeks ago, what would it be, ma'am?
Well, unfortunately, there's no machine that can read people's minds to know what their intent is when they're coming here. But I think one of the most important improvements that we could make would be to require mandatory interviews for non-immigrant visa applicants and also people who are applying for green cards and immigrant visas.
Okay,
we should eyes on and a personal contact with everyone who is.
Can you say that again, please? We should have personal contact with every single visa holder of every single individual that wants to enter this country. Am I right or wrong?
Right, at a minimum for their first application. Some renewals are not high risk once you can examine their travel history, but every new applicant, with very few exceptions, should have a personal interview.
What the public needs to understand and what we know is that 77 million people voted for exactly what President Trump is executing right now. The faux outrage from the left continues to ignore the damage that has been done to our country and people that are literally maiming our fellow Americans while we have done nothing and we stood by idly. We are now acting and behaving in a way that enforces the law. This is not xenophobia. This is the way and the process that it takes to enter a sovereign nation, and we at the federal government must protect that. I am somebody that has deployed all over the world. No other country operates this way. There is not a single country in the world that would allow 20 million people to enter their country illegally, and then when we do something about it, we then cry xenophobia. It would never happen. When I was stationed in Saudi Arabia, you had to have a diplomatic passport just to enter Saudi Arabian airspace. So the idea that we should at least speak to every single person that wants to enter our country is a novel idea because everybody else does it. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here. Mr. Chairman, I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Crockett.
Thank you so much. It's interesting that we're being accused of wanting all kinds of criminals to be on the streets, or that we don't believe that people should show up to their meetings and appointments. Last time I checked, there's a lot of people that are actually being grabbed as they are going in for their appointments. In fact, we know that one of the candidates that was recently running in this mayoral, he ended up being arrested because he decided that he was actually going to escort people that are actually showing up to their meetings. Or we know that the Pope, yes, the Pope himself, decided that the church may need to have people that are going to escort people as they're going into their meetings. Because the reality is that what they are claiming what they want to do versus what they're actually doing, the actions don't match up. And while we are supposed to be talking about visas, somehow we continue to cherry pick and talk about one criminal act and another criminal act. And it is so very interesting to me that, yes, we will say people are xenophobic, because when you start to decide that just because somebody came from another country, they are automatically some kind of criminal, that does sound kind of xenophobic to me, because you are using a paintbrush to paint an entire group of people where the vast majority of them are coming here because they are actually seeking a better life. But let me get to what this hearing is supposed to be about. The idea that Trump and my Republican colleagues want to restore integrity and security in the visa process is actually a joke. Let me be clear. Integrity is not snatching lawful visa holders off the streets and throwing them into unmarked vans. Integrity is not revoking visas based on social media posts that hurt somebody's little feelings because kids decide that they want to go after Trump or this administration. We have a thing called free speech in this country. And since we're talking about integrity, I'm confused as to why my Republican colleagues aren't talking about the lack of integrity when it comes to the president's family's visas. Let me remind y'all that Melania, the First Lady, a model, and when I say model, I'm not talking about Tyra Banks, Cindy Crawford, or Naomi Campbell level, applied for and was given an EB-1 visa. And what that stands for is an Einstein visa. Now, y'all that don't know, let me tell you how you receive an Einstein visa. You're supposed to have some sort of significant achievement, like being awarded a Nobel Peace Prize or a Pulitzer, being an Olympic medalist, or having other sustained extraordinary abilities and success in sciences, arts, education, business, or athletics. Last time I checked, the First Lady had none of those accolades under her belt. It doesn't take an Einstein to see that the math ain't mathin' here. Nevertheless, what Republicans are doing with this reconciliation process, the travel bans and revoking visas, jeopardizes our national security. It threatens our communities, our higher education, and our economy. Visas like the largely vetted J visas for higher education and M visas for trade, training, attract the next innovators, medical providers, researchers, and educators that we need to build on American success. I'm not gonna mess up your name, so I'm not doing that. But I'm with you, okay? In your experience, do individuals on J or M visas typically improve or impair our economy?
They generally improve the economy, and I can give a brief example. My wife is a very successful woman. She makes a ton of money, which I'm grateful for. And the reason why we're able to do that while having 3 children is because of the au pair visa, somebody who is here on a J. Okay. Who is here and able to supply this for us. But I also want to defend Melania real quick. Not everybody could marry Donald Trump, and I think that's quite an achievement. So I think she deserves credit for that. Nobody up here could have done it.
You sure right to do it. But anyway, in fact, J visa holders contribute $43.8 billion to the U.S. economy and support more than 300,000 jobs. And make no mistake, immigrants improve the health of U.S. citizens too. Despite the fact we already have a doctor shortage, Trump's reckless travel ban and visa overhaul are exacerbating this crisis by impairing hundreds of hospitals with foreign-trained doctors set to do their residencies here in the United States, meaning fewer people will get the help they need and more people will die. Now, let me remind you that Republicans are trying to gut Medicaid. Roughly 4.5 million people receive caregiver services through Medicaid, and most of these folks are in red states. And wouldn't you know that in 2023, Kaiser Family Foundation estimated that almost 30% of long-term care providers, or home caretakers were immigrants. It's like Republicans want Americans to suffer. Now, Republicans say visas make us less secure, but let's talk about how visas given to victims of crimes like rape, murder, human trafficking, torture, abduction, kidnapping, to help law enforcement with their investigation or prosecutions of these crimes. These folks are risking their own security for broader safety of Americans and our communities. Thank you so much. I will yield.
Gentlelady yields, and
What we just witnessed in Congress wasn't a debate, it was a demolition. Representative Jasmine Crockett didn't just challenge the Republican narrative, she dismantled it piece by piece in front of a national audience, while Representative Hunt ranted about imaginary invasions and peddled fear like it was a campaign bumper sticker. Crockett brought clarity, data, and the kind of righteous accountability that makes MAGA Republicans squirm in their seats. Hunt began his screed by blaming President Biden and the Democrats for an alleged flood of unvetted immigrants, invoking terrorism, 9/11, and even Saudi Arabian airspace as if those unrelated boogeymen justify his xenophobic hysteria. He wants us to believe that every person seeking a better life in this country is a potential threat, unless, of course, they marry a Republican president. And that's where Crockett's brilliance cut through like a blade. She calmly reminded the entire chamber and everyone watching that integrity isn't about throwing people into unmarked vans or revoking visas over mean tweets about Trump. Integrity isn't about cherry-picking tragedies to justify draconian immigration bans while ignoring the economic lifelines those very immigrants provide. She brought receipts reminding us that Melania Trump, yes, that Melania, was given an Einstein visa, supposedly reserved for Nobel laureates, Pulitzer winners, Olympic champions, and world-class experts. What were her qualifications? Modeling, not the Tyra Banks kind, not even the Naomi Campbell kind, just modeling. Apparently, in Trump's America, you don't need world-class achievement. You just need the right last name and the right photo op. Crockett wasn't mocking Melania. She was exposing the double standard. The GOP screams about immigrants gaming the system while their own leaders are the first to abuse it. And while Hunt was busy stoking fear with stories of Molotov cocktails, Crockett pointed to cold, hard facts. J and M visa holders contribute over $43.8 billion to the U.S. economy. They support more than 300,000 jobs. They're filling critical roles in healthcare, education, research, and caregiving, roles that many Americans either can't or won't fill. And let's not forget, many of those caregivers, especially in red states, are immigrants, keeping the elderly and disabled alive, while the GOP works overtime to gut Medicaid. If you think that's a coincidence, think again. Trump's reckless immigration bans didn't protect the homeland. They sabotaged it. Hundreds of hospitals now face staffing shortages because foreign-trained doctors can't get visas. That means longer wait times, overworked nurses, and real lives lost. But hey, as long as it owns the libs, right? Crockett didn't just highlight the economic value of immigrants. She highlighted their humanity. She explained how U visas are issued to victims of violent crimes who risk their safety to help law enforcement. These aren't threats. These are survivors. These are allies. These are people doing more for American justice than many of the Republicans in that room ever have. And yet the GOP continues to pretend that every foreign accent is a red flag, every brown face a potential criminal. Let's be clear. This is racism dressed up as security. It's nationalism masquerading as patriotism. And it's hurting our country. Crockett's performance wasn't performative. It was principled. She reminded us that the real threat to America isn't people crossing the border seeking hope. It's politicians weaponizing fear to cling to power. It's lawmakers who wrap cruelty in a flag and call it strength. It's the party that says family values while separating families at the border. And through it all, she never lost her cool. She didn't need to. The truth was loud enough. Watching Crockett expose Republican hypocrisy with surgical precision was a masterclass in congressional accountability. She did what every Democrat in that room, and frankly, every decent American, wished they could do. She spoke truth to power and refused to be drowned out by the noise. If the GOP wants to talk about law and order, maybe they should start by cleaning up their own house. Maybe they should look into how Melania got her visa. Maybe they should stop protecting a man who launched a violent insurrection to overturn an election. Maybe they should stop spreading lies that get people killed. But they won't, because this was never about immigration. It was about fear. It was about division. It was about keeping their base angry and misinformed while they dismantle democracy piece by piece. And thank God for voices like Jasmine Crockett, who refused to let that slide. What she did today matters. It matters because every immigrant child watching got to see someone in power say, "You are not the problem." It matters because every worker on a J visa trying to support their family got to hear, "You belong here." It matters because the truth was spoken into the record on the floor in front of everyone, and no amount of MAGA screaming can erase it. So here's the takeaway. Facts still matter. Integrity still matters. And in a political world overrun by cowards in red ties and empty slogans, Jasmine Crockett showed up with receipts, with fire, and with purpose. This has been Tarek Melrose, and you've been watching Tarek Melrose Vlogs. Subscribe, stay loud, stay informed, and stay fighting for the truth. Because over here, we don't run from the lies. We expose them. See you in the next one.